All right. So one of the ways that you can have a little bit of control over your vote is through direct democracy. So ballot initiatives, ballot measures, we talk about that quite a bit on this show. And we have now moved on to Ohio, interesting state. So we're starting Ohio tonight. Ballot measure results for 2023. We're getting closer and closer to covering the ballot measures that will be on the ballot this November. So we should start covering those, I believe, late June. But for now, Ohio's results from 2023. So let's explain how initiatives work in Ohio. Citizens of Ohio may initiate state statutes, aka state laws, through the process of indirect initiative, meaning after a successful petition drive makes a stop at the Ohio legislature to give them a chance to adopt, to pass, or reject, then goes to the ballot for voters to weigh in on. Once sufficient signatures have been collected, statutory initiatives are first presented to the Ohio General Assembly. If approved, petitioners may collect an additional round of signatures within 90 days in order to place the statute on the ballot. That second round of signature collection transitions from indirect initiative to direct initiative. Citizens of Ohio may also initiate constitutional amendments through the process of direct initiative, where a successful petition drive proposed amendments proceed directly to the ballot for a vote of the people. The General Assembly may also propose amendments to the people as legislatively referred constitutional amendments. Now, Ohio does have a single subject rule. The single subject rule in Ohio, proposed measures must address only one subject. The Ohio Revised Code further clarifies this requirement by stating only one proposal of law or constitutional amendment to be proposed by initiative petition shall be contained in an initiative petition to enable the voters to vote on that proposal separately. If a measure is found to propose more than one statute or amendment, the Ohio Ballot Board may divide the measure into separate ballot questions. Let me break that down for you in another way. So you cannot have a ballot measure in Ohio that basically contains two subject matters. So let's say I wanted to have a ballot measure for, let's say, expanding Medicaid or something like that in Ohio. And I wanted to actually pair that with creating public banks or something like that. Those would have to be two separate measures. You can't have that as one. Roger actually has a note here about monopolies in Ohio. He says, Sabby, this is pure genius and unique in and of itself. He said he'll add it to his CBI recipe. It says here that Section 1E of Article 2 of the Ohio Constitution gives a restriction on initiatives that institute monopolies or special privileges. The Ohio Ballot Board is required to investigate any proposed initiative and determine if it would create an economic monopoly or special privilege for any non-public entity, including individuals, corporations, and organizations. That's actually huge. That's pretty cool. If the Ohio Ballot Board determines that an initiative would create such a monopoly or special privilege, two questions must be put on the ballot. The first one must ask, let's get down here. Sorry. Shall the petitioner in violation of this division be authorized to initiate a constitutional amendment that grants or creates a monopoly, oligopoly, or cartel, specifies or determines a tax rate or confers a commercial interest, commercial right, or commercial license that is not available to other similarly situated positions? The second question must provide a summary of the proposed initiative and ask voters if they wish to approve it. Both questions must receive majority approval for the initiative to be enacted. That is good. Competing initiatives, Ohio law provides that in the event that conflicting measures are approved, the measure with the most affirmative votes takes effect. The other measure does not become law. I usually don't cover the number of signatures to get on the ballot because we've covered this time and time again. We can always look at that later as we go into this year. But I want to go ahead and get to that first. Oh, this part is important. I'm sorry. Deadlines for collection. Ohio law does not limit how long a petition may be circulated. That's huge when you compare that to other states. And then I want to get to the first initiative here, which failed. An Ohio proposal asked voters during an August special election to boost the threshold for passing constitutional amendments to 60% rather than a simple majority. It would also double the number of counties where signatures must be collected, adding an extra layer of difficulty to qualifying initiatives for the ballot. They tried to pass this in South Dakota in 2022, and I covered that as well. This is sneaky and it's a trick because what the state is trying to do, they're trying to make it more difficult for ballot initiatives to pass in that state. When they tell you you need to have a 60% approval instead of a majority, that means if you had a ballot measure for, let's go back to expanding Medicaid or something like that, and let's say 55% of the people voted for it, because it's not 60% of the people, it still wouldn't pass. See, they think they're sneaky. That's them trying to be sneaky. So they tried to do that in South Dakota. It also failed there as well. And it has failed here in Ohio by 57.11%. And that was Ohio issue 1, 60% vote requirement to approve constitutional amendments measure. That was on the ballot August 8th, 2023, and it was defeated. So shout out to that, because again, we don't want that 60% to pass, and other states are trying to sneak this one by too. So you really have to pay attention, guys. If you're in a ballot measure state, if you see that one pop up, you do not want to vote in favor of that 60% requirement instead of majority rule. Sneaky little fuckers. Oh, sorry. Excuse my language. That was a little bad. Sorry. Who supported this? So mainly Republicans, right? So Governor Richard DeWine, Matt Huffman, Robert McCauley, Jason Stevens, some of the organizations that supported it: Ohio Chamber of Commerce, of course, they represent businesses, Ohio Hotel and Lodging Association. So you see this, Right to Life, Restaurant Association, etc. One of the arguments from State Senator Matt Huffman: when the initiative was passed 100 years ago, the idea was that citizens of the state would rise up because the legislature wouldn't act. I think big changes to the Constitution should have a more difficult standard. Yeah. So in other words, Matt Huffman there doesn't want to make it so that it would be easier for citizens in Ohio to disrupt business, because that's what a lot of that is about. Like, a lot of these ballot measures do disrupt big business in some way, shape, or form. All about money. Who opposed it? Of course, majority Democrat politicians, and you'll see former officials that opposed it. All Democrats except for former Governor John Kasich. He also opposed it. Political parties that opposed it: the Libertarian Party of Ohio and the Working Families Party. The unions opposed it: Ohio AFL-CIO, the teachers, auto workers, and of course, so that's the UAW, the Ohio Education Association, and organizations, the ACLU, the League of Women Voters, which needs to come back, by the way. That would change a lot in electoral politics if the League of Women Voters was a big thing again. Planned Parenthood Advocates of Ohio, Sierra Club. And one of the arguments for that is from Catherine Terser of Common Cause, Ohio. It is inappropriate to cherry pick an election in August, which is likely to have poor voter turnout. For more than 100 years, Ohioans have had the right to come together, gather enough signatures, and place a proposal on the ballot. Citizen-led ballot measures aren't overused. We haven't had one on the ballot since 2018. It's unnecessary to make the process more complicated, and it's disrespectful for voters. Yes, and that is a good way of phrasing that. It is disrespectful. It's a slap in the face. Like the majority would vote for it, and they're just like, yeah, it's about 60% though, so sorry, doesn't pass. Yeah, that's bullshit. Man, with the language tonight. Okay, and Roger wanted me to read this as well. Republican Representative Brian Stewart. All 88 counties should have a voice in determining what amendments make it on the ballot, and to eliminate the cumbersome cure period, which gives initiative petitions effectively a do-over when they fail to meet the requirements for ballot access. So that was coming from Brian Stewart. Roger added a little note here that said, seeing that the legislature is applying the same standard to the voters as they apply to themselves, where all is required is 60% of both chambers in one session to pass the amendment before putting it before the voters for ratification. That is when it comes to legislative initiative amendments. And now they're asking voters to match their high threshold standard. I would actually vote for this, except the fact that they have increased the distribution requirement to get signatures from 44 counties to all 88 counties. Either have a high threshold for voter ratification, but no distribution requirement, or have a distribution requirement, but simple majority to pass and ratify. Don't make it too hard. Don't make it too easy. I wouldn't approve the 60% at all, because they can also try to take that to another level as well. And then when we come back on Thursday, we will start with the next ballot initiative. We'll continue the ballot measures for Ohio on Thursday. So yeah, definitely check that out as well. So finishing up Ohio, the abortion issue. So these are Ohio ballot measures for 2023, the results. Ohio issue 1. Right to make reproductive decisions, including abortion initiative. A yes vote supported amending the Constitution, provide a state constitutional right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions, including but not limited to decisions about abortion, contraception, fertility treatment, miscarriage care, and continuing pregnancy, and allow the state to restrict abortion after fetal viability, except when necessary to protect the pregnant patient's life or health. This measure passed. It was ratified by 56.62%. So that was pretty huge there for Ohio. And this is interesting too. As of 2023, abortion was legal in Ohio for up to 21 weeks and 6 days of pregnancy. When it came to pass issue 1, passing or failing, Grace Panetta, a reporter from the 19th News, said, if issue 1 passes, abortion and other forms of reproductive health care will be protected in the state constitution. If it fails, the courts will most likely decide the fate of abortion access in Ohio. So I think a lot of us remember that measure passing in Ohio. And who supported it, we can see it was Democrat politicians that supported that measure. And there was one nonpartisan, and that was the Cleveland Mayor Justin Bibb. Some former officials, again, Democrats. What's interesting is New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, Hillary Clinton, like none of these individuals, right? They don't reside there in Ohio except for Nina Turner. But it's interesting that they also were supporting the measure. Political parties that supported: Green Party of Ohio, Working Families Party, Democratic Party, the teachers, right? A union supported it. Some organizations include the ACLU, Abortion Fund of Ohio, et cetera. Is a long list there. Democratic Socialists of America, Planned Parenthood. You guys know how this works. And then one of the arguments from Lauren, the chair of Ohioans for Reproductive Freedom, said the people of Ohio overwhelmingly support abortion access and keeping the government out of our personal lives. This citizen-led amendment will do just that through our deep community partnership and long history of protecting reproductive freedom and providing access to health care. This campaign puts the power back in the hands of the people of Ohio. So yeah, we all remember. I think all of you remember when that passed, right? At least I remember when it passed. So that was, and of course, you guys know with the opponents, the Republican politicians were the ones that opposed it, right? Interesting, because it said there that keeping the government out of your life, and the Republican Party usually the ones that say keep the government out. But when it comes to the abortion issue, they want the government to be involved. Interesting. And then I think we're going to go to, there should be one more BI measure here for Ohio. With the this measure, you can see how much money was spent to support it and how much money was spent to oppose it, right? So again, usually the amount of money spent that has the highest dollar amount is usually the way the measure goes. Right, which way it passes. Usually that's how it works. And then there's one more about the marijuana one we'll get to as well. Note here from Roger that said a simple majority vote was required to approve the citizen-initiated constitutional amendment. In August, voters rejected a different issue one put on the ballot by the Ohio legislature, which would have required a 60% vote among other changes. This was ratified by 56%. Yeah. And that's where that 60% can become a little scary. And then the other measure here is Ohio issue 2, which is marijuana legalization, which I'm sure a lot of you that live in Ohio became excited about. A yes vote supported this ballot initiative to legalize marijuana in Ohio, including allowing the sale and purchase of marijuana, which a new division of cannabis control would regulate. 2, allowing adults who are at least 21 years old to use and possess marijuana, including up to 2.5 ounces of marijuana. And 3, enacting a 10% tax on marijuana sales. So yeah, this measure was approved by 56.97%. Yeah, I know. It's making its way around. It's making its way around through the states, which I think is pretty based. Even if you don't smoke, I mean, it's a plan. Sorry, it's a plan. Yeah. And it talks about social equity and jobs program. Yeah, this is another one too. The initiative established the Cannabis Social Equity and Jobs Program. The program was designed to remedy the harms resulting from the disproportionate enforcement of marijuana-related laws and provide financial assistance and license application support and reduce barriers to ownership and opportunity to those most directly and adversely impacted by the enforcement of marijuana-related laws who are interested in starting or working in marijuana business. Yeah. So, I mean, like these, again, creating jobs. And every state is different. So just make sure you check that. Every state is different. The laws here in Massachusetts may be different from in Ohio. But this is a measure, I think, that has a lot of times bipartisan support. And you can see that here. Who supported it? We have Democrats, a Republican, and Cleveland Mayor Justin Bibb, who's nonpartisan. Nina Turner, Tim Ryan supported that. But typically, if you talk to people, whether they're Republican or Democrat, most people I've talked to support it. Green Party of Ohio, corporations, Curaleaf, organizations, the ACLU of Ohio, Marijuana Policy Project. And one of the arguments from Tom Herron, we are proposing to regulate marijuana for adult use, just like we do for alcohol. Our proposal fixes a broken system while ensuring local control, keeping marijuana out of the hands of children and benefiting everyone. So yeah. And of course, Republicans opposed it. You guys know how this goes. And I just want to go to the part here. about the money that was spent. So again, once see the dollar amount, over $342,000 spent to oppose it. And we have over 5.7 million to support it. So once again, the higher dollar amount usually wins when it comes to these particular ballot measures. A note here from Roger Meadows. Roger, thank you so much for this. Legislative alteration. The Ohio General Assembly may repeal or amend an initiated state statute without having to ask the voters first by a simple majority vote. Let's see if they can let this stand as is. In the meantime, someone should get a citizen-initiated constitutional amendment for an Ohio public bank now that cannabis is legalized. Cannabis businesses are going to need somewhere to deposit those profits. As it stands, currently, they can't deposit profits in banks because they must abide by federal banking regulations since they are FDIC insured. A public bank can be the replacement insurer for the FDIC when it comes to insuring credit unions and local community banks. Then I wonder how we're doing it here in Massachusetts, because we don't have a public bank and we have like several cannabis shops. So I wonder how they're doing it here. Like, where are they depositing it? I don't know. Interesting. In other words, it'll be the state that legalized cannabis insuring local community banks and credit unions rather than the federal government through the FDIC. It's really interesting. Yeah, now I'm curious. I wonder, like, how are they doing that?